Hello and welcome back, Prisca. We are so glad to have you back to do this follow-up from our main leadership discussion with you. We had quite a few questions that weren't able to be answered live, so here we'll get you guys those answers, and as always, we love to hear more from Prisca always.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Well, great. We will just jump right in. This question is from Jasmine Ramirez. And she was wondering, what can you say to those of us who are the first Latinas or POC to lead in a power position and at those decision-making tables?
I'd say remember that the myth of meritocracy is real. So the myth of meritocracy says, okay, meritocracy says if you work hard, you can make it. It's like this capitalist idea that everybody has the equal advantages of getting success, essentially. And that's been proven to be a myth. So people from systemic racism is real because we now can document like people don't get opportunities. If you have a name that sounds quote unquote too Black, you probably won't get an interview. If you don't dress in ways that are coded as professional, which is very male and very white corporate America, you won't get that follow-up interview. You won't get raises. So there's like a lot of things at play that keep people out of opportunities. So if we get so lucky to enter positions of power, I think our job is to prioritize the people we know have the talent, but maybe aren't quote unquote polished. So for me, I'll give my example. I was on the panel for the National Endowment of the Arts, and a panel of judges. And I was also in the panel for NELAC, so it's the only art endowment for Latinx in the whole country. When I was looking at applications, I was prioritizing Afro-Latinx. I was like, I don't need your application to look perfect. I just want you to get this opportunity. And I'm not ashamed of that. I think that we need to prioritize the voices, even within our communities, that get silenced, the voices that don't get seen. I had a professor once tell me, I'm harder on my Latinx students because the world is hard on them. And I was like, no, that's not me. My ethics are, the world is hard for people of color, for working poor people. It's just hard. And it's up to us to leave the door ajar for people who don't get the opportunities to be in positions of power. So yeah, it's always about, I think about the Residente song, that por la salida entro y explotó desde adentro. That's what I think people like us, Latinas in power that get into these positions, that's what we have to do. We have to leave the door ajar and then like, excuse my French, but like fuck shit up from the inside. If we do get inside, we have to disrupt this whole system because as it stands, it's not benefiting us. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it. Yes. Perfect. So how about we jump to this one about this kind of ties into the last question about the Latina Rebels as a whole was kind of built on that kind of foundation that you were just sort of talking about. I might say this name completely wrong, but I'm going to try it. So, oh my gosh, I just lost it. My bad. Janelli asked how you define the Latina Rebel and if it's a movement or a lifestyle, and how can Latina Rebels connect us to other parts of the world?
I think it's both. But I'm not prescriptive about it. I'm not like, oh, you're not a Latino rebel. You know, like I don't ever, I think it's the beginning of a movement. It's like in the midst of the movement. It is a lifestyle. It's all of that. It's supposed to be like an awakening. I remember walking in my high school and seeing this little tiny blue book. And I wasn't radicalized. I was still, 100% in the church. My parents, I was very indoctrinated and very much like a good girl. But I picked up this book, and it was Langston Hughes' Let America Be Great Again. And I was like, this poem speaks to me in a way that I couldn't name it. And years later, when I became radicalized, it's one of my favorite books still, and I own it. It's like Latina Rebels is supposed to be a seed, but it really is for you to kind of look back on. And sometimes you might not agree with posts we have, sometimes you might not agree with opinions we have, but it's something to revisit at every stage in your life and see, how can I see this differently now that I'm 30? How can I see this differently now that I'm 50? How can I see this differently? And I think we're growing, we're evolving, it's the whole, like, we're resisting all the narratives that are being imposed on us. So it's a lot of things, but it's whatever you need it to be at the point that you're at right now. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's perfect for all generations. I think we all need to have that re-upping and just coming back to those things that we loved previously.
Yeah.
See how it grows and changes. So I think a lot of people really resonated with the stories you told in our initial discussion. I think personally, the power or the policies of pigmentation or the policing of pigmentation, I think that as someone who changes with the summer is huge. And Yulissa commented that she's a brown-skinned Latina in higher education. She really appreciated you sharing your thoughts that not many individuals understand, and these things easily get dismissed in different circles. She is currently in her 3rd year of her undergrad, and she's looking to go to grad school. So any tips that you have to share on how to overcome the anxiety of pursuing something scary and unknown like graduate school?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of what I would have told young me, because it was scary. It is scary, especially if you're first gen, especially if you're going to PWI, so like a private white institution. There's so many layers. It was good that I was naive in some ways, so that you're more aware. The question, the person who wrote the question, that they're more aware, I think adds another layer that's makes it more complicated. But I would say this is my strategy for all spaces, specifically white spaces, is I study people a lot, and I give people enough rope, and some people will kind of incriminate themselves, like they'll kind of expose themselves. But for me, yo soy bien calladita at the beginning, and I just listen and I look around and I'm like, who's an ally, who's saying something when this really messed up thing came up. Like, I don't make myself the warrior at the beginning. I don't, because it's a lot of emotional work, and people expect us already to do that work. So my strategy is very much like the first year, I think, of my graduate program, and mine, granted, was 4 years long, so it's a lot longer than most people's masters. But my first year, I just like listened a lot, and I tried to figure out the environment and the culture, and because it's a first gen, it's all new. And then I was like, okay, I found my crew, and then I began to like take up every space I could and not apologize for it, and not. Yeah, it's kind of, I think you need to take it slow, because it will drain you, and you're still there to get a degree. And we do this additional labor, students of color, we're like, we're gonna change the program, and we're gonna change this and change that, and I also have to like do well in school. And like the white counterparts are only focusing on doing well in school mostly. And we're almost getting in our own way, because we're trying to do all the things that the institution should be doing, right? Like, they should have hired somebody to take care of these ills and these problems that they have within it, but they haven't. And so they're expecting the students to kind of get the momentum going. And that's how a lot of us that's why retention rate in some universities isn't great for students of color. So a lot of us don't graduate. That's why a lot of us drop out. That's why a lot of us graduate and never look back. So take it slow, find your people, and then let them have it. Yeah.
Great. Yes. Along that same vein, so you have a very strong sense of self. Well, you present with a very strong sense of self. I think we all are very interested in how you maintain your sense of self and your sense of belonging now and, you know, previously.
I didn't really have a strong sense of self until I figured out everything that was happening. And that was like my late 20s. So I haven't really been this person this long. If you'll talk to my friends who even met me in graduate school, they're like, you're different. I wouldn't recognize you if you told me that you would have become this person. I would have been like, no. So I think it's a passion for people who are going through experiences that I went through. So it's like a compassion more than anything that I think people see. So the anger and the fieriness and the sassiness that comes out when I'm like not mincing my words. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. But that was my cell phone, yeah. But all of that comes from like, I have like a very good ticker for justice and fairness. So I think that's kind of where my identity ended up in. And once I figured out all the isms and all the things that kind of had controlled me, I was like, no, this is it. Not on my watch kind of thing. But it's still new. It's still something that's part of my identity only in the last 7-6 years. That's not that long. So I think it's that I really am passionate about justice and for our gente specifically, but also I do a lot of therapy. I do a lot of friend check-ins. I keep strong networks back at Nicaragua and in Miami with my family. And it's just keeping a lot of people around to keep you accountable. So when I do get a little bit, like I got invited to White House, and if I get a little fresa, like I'll get a little cocky about it, they'll be like, no, that's not who you are. That's not what you say you're about. Like having friends who are also really honest, that won't just be like, you're amazing and we love you, which is great. But sometimes you need people to be like, you need to check yourself because that's not consistent. So yeah, a lot of things, but it's still new. So we'll see how I sound at 40 or 50. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think having those friends that are cheerleaders and then also those friends and family members that are like, hold up.
Yeah.
Who is this person?
Yeah, exactly.
That's going to be huge. That goes really well into Jocelyn Loya's question. So she was talking about, she works towards racial justice and all justices of the world, and how overwhelming and exhausting and sometimes defeating this can be. So you touched on what I assume are some of your self-care practices, but what has helped you in self-care in this specific aspect, and what are suggestions you have for staying motivated but sane and motivated?
Yeah. I dabble a lot on deviant spirituality. So spiritualities that in my church they would have been like, it's a bruja, and like pull it out of you. I do a lot of that. So I carry crystals, I carry protective stuff a lot. I just did a limpia recently with an egg. So I do stuff like that because I think it's important to keep all facets of our spirituality alive. The places of us that like colonialism and westernization and capitalism kind of strips away from people of color. So I keep all those things alive, and it really, really, like, I don't do it for show. Like these are real spiritual practices. So I take them seriously when I do them. So whatever you choose to do, don't do it like, if somebody's like, oh, go do your nails, that's self-care. If that's not authentic to you, what you think is important for your soul, don't do that. I have a friend that, like, her self-care is actively doing things so she won't be stressed. And she'll name it. She's like, I can't go to the spa and call that self-care. Self-care for me is doing the dishes if it's 2 a.m, so that in the morning I can sleep in. If that's what functions to you, for you to stay sane, for you to stay, you know, steadfast in this lucha that is kind of, I think, lifelong. Once you're aware of what's happening, do something that makes sense and do something that you can integrate into your life seamlessly, and that isn't like this huge disruptor. Like, self-care, I think, gets clumped up in this like spa situation that isn't isn't relevant if you're a busy person, if you're a mom, if you're a lot of things. It just isn't relevant. So find things that are good for you. For me, it's spiritual practices, and then just commit to them. Like, do them for real, not for anyone else but for you. And if they resonate with you, then they should just feel simple and easy to do.
Yeah, that sounds like the key to staying sane too.
Yeah.
Make sure it's your self-care, not the magazine's self-care.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, great. This one has a little bit of, and this is anonymous questioning, but this person said that they feel in between a lot. They have been told to uphold white standards to blend in, and their culture is not that. As a result of their parents' desire for them to assimilate, they didn't teach them Spanish. And they often feel in between, not white enough, not Latina enough. For Latinas who feel in between like this, how do you recommend they not just navigate both worlds, but embrace culture fully?
Yeah, I think that's mostly what I meant when I said in Latina Rebels, we embrace the complexities of what it means to be Latina, because I was born in Nicaragua. I still have ties to Nicaragua, like all my family's in Nicaragua, but I'll still go to Nicaragua and I'm called a gringa because of the way I dress, because of my mannerisms, because their street smart is different than US street smarts. So like you can't help but feel that way. And there's like variances to it, like there's degrees to how out of place we feel. But I think all of us can relate to feeling out of place. Like I don't feel like I belong in any American white context. I've never felt that way. And I have never felt like I belonged back in Nicaragua, not since we've migrated. I haven't felt like I belonged. So even with immigrants, sometimes we're all in different locations of that non-belongingness, that it's hard to even find, like not all skin folk are kinfolk. I don't know if you've heard that saying.
Yeah.
But it's like people say like find other Latinas or Latinx, and I'm like, that's not always the people who you might resonate with. Like, so just don't let people tell you what to do or how to identify or how to feel. Don't let people define Latinidad by proximity to our Spanish ancestry. They're Europeans. Like, why are we so, like, we get really attached, like, you have to speak Spanish. And I'm like, but that's Spain Spanish, and it's European still, and there are colonizers. So I don't know why you think that makes us more in tune with our culture. But so yeah, find your people, find your tribe, find your crew, but don't let people tell you where you should be positioned, because that's how we get caught up in that whole cycle of needing to fit into whatever others tell us is Latinidad instead of how we embody it is Latinidad.
Absolutely. Yeah, Latinidad can mean something different to everyone.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, for our last question, this comes from Ana Baez, and she said that she loves your story. And this must have been after one of your mommy stories, that she asked, how proud do you feel of your parents?
It's complicated. I'm really proud of them. You know what I mean? Like when you really think about what they did, I think all of us can do that. Like, especially if your parents are immigrants, when you think about what they did, what they've gone through, like my dad was fired from the church at one point, and had to pass out newspapers, and he's only ever been the breadwinner in our household. That was like what men were supposed to do in my household. So I've seen him like struggle a lot, and I've seen him cry, and I've seen him mourn my mom. I've seen her mourn her friendships and her relationships with her sisters, and it's hard to move, especially when you're older. My mom was 32, my dad was 35 when they moved here. So I'm just like, I can't imagine going to another country, because I'm now, I'm 34 and turning 35 soon, and I'm just like, I can't, like, I know people here. I can't imagine going to, like, I don't know, Russia, where I don't know the language, I don't know the culture, I don't know the people, I don't even know where to start to get people. Like, so in those respects, I'm like, wow, they survived blending into a culture that wasn't their own. And they kept so many parts of Nicaragua alive for me, still to today. So I'm proud of their resilience. I'm proud of their desire to move here. It was based on wanting to provide a better life for us and more opportunities for us. So I'm like, that's like groundbreaking. But in a lot of ways, like, I don't have a relationship with my dad. That's why I talk about mi mami a lot, because she's the only one I really talk to. So in a lot of ways, I wish more for my dad, and I wish he had the capacity for more. Somebody told me, if you don't develop the critical thinking skills by your late 20s, like, you just can't develop them, because your brain's done growing and developing. And I have to remind myself that a lot when I'm like, papi, no, like, that's based on this, and it's based on this, and it's based on this. And he's like, what? Like, he can't even wrap his mind around it. And I'm like, he's not dumb, he's not incapable, it's just he didn't develop those skills. And I have to hold back a lot and reevaluate. It doesn't mean that we're gonna be the best buds. Like, I keep a lot of boundaries with my dad, and a lot of, you don't speak to me this way, you don't call me for this kind of stuff, I do that, and I screen. If he's calling me and my heart's not in the right place, I don't pick up, because I'm not prepared for whatever he can bring on any given day. So I'm very proud of them. I have to have a lot of grace with them, but I'm also self-preserving at this point, because I have kind of changed so much from what they expected, and at least in my household, that's not rewarded. So it's complicated, but very proud of them.
That's beautiful. And I think the complicated nature of a lot of these questions exists.
Yeah.
But we are just so proud to, have someone out there speaking the truth for Latinas, and all of us here at the LCFC are just so inspired by you always.
Yeah, thank you.
And we just want to thank you for being a part of our Latinas LEAD, Power Summit years ago, and our virtual leadership series currently. And, we'll always be following what you're up to over here. So thank you so much again for talking with us and answering a few more questions. It's really interesting to hear about these fitting into these spaces and self-care and these things that, we don't have as many people to pose these questions to. So thank you for taking it like a champ.
Thank you for having me back to do them, because I also was like, no, we only got one answered. It was really sad. So yeah, thank you for having me back.
Yeah, well, thank you, and we'll look forward to hearing more.
Adios.
Adios.